Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody. So welcome. I think we've got over 60 people registered, and maybe 30 have just joined us. So we'll wait for about 30 more seconds to get started. I'm Susan Brown. I am with both the Kansas City Short-Term Rental Alliance and the Missouri Vacation Home Alliance. Let's give it just a second. I'll introduce Ryan, our speaker with Beyond. Okay, I feel like that's enough time. Ryan is out in the San Francisco area, and he's here to help us. We are one of the 16 host cities for the World Cup, and there's a lot of questions within our private Facebook group. And just when I'm out every day, I'm getting press questions. How's it going? Are you getting booked? We have people that are excited because they're booked, and we have other people that are thinking, this is going a little bit slower than I anticipated. Am I priced right? Where should I be? And how do we compare to the other cities? So that's why we asked Ryan and his team at Beyond to answer some of those questions, because we are getting pretty close. Here we are in April, and it starts June 16th. So this is really a critical time period for us. We don't want to drop our prices too fast. We don't want to hold our prices too long. So hopefully Ryan can help us with that. So I'll introduce Ryan. This is Ryan Saylor. Ryan started his time with Beyond as a revenue manager. He worked directly with short-term rental property owners to help them develop advanced revenue management tools and strategies. Although he is now their director of product marketing, he still spends some time helping property managers and owners reach their revenue goals. Prior to joining Beyond, Ryan spent time in hotel revenue management, working with independent and branded hotels, developing strategies related to pricing, distribution, and digital marketing. Ryan, I'll let you take off.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for the great intro. Really excited to be here, and especially talking about this data and the trends that we're seeing. It's certainly very pertinent now that we're in April. We're getting closer and closer. Now that we're past even some of the big events from this year, more and more people are going to be starting to talk about the World Cup coming to a lot of major cities in the region. So excited to take a deep dive here today. As Susan mentioned, pretty much my whole career I've been in revenue management and pricing and data. Started in hotels, and then I've been with Beyond for almost 7 years now. So very familiar with short-term rental practices, vacation rentals, hosts, property managers, everyone in between, and really familiar with a lot of these events that we see come about in markets globally. Really, ever since I started in revenue management, but especially here at Beyond, I started working with customers. And I also started working with our algorithm and revenue management team on how we actually go about recommending dynamic prices for these events. The World Cup is a great example. I put it in the same class as like the Olympics, the Super Bowl, these big major events that certainly cause a lot of event compression, but don't always take place every year or even in the same market. So it always provides an interesting challenge and certainly a great opportunity for different communities as well. So we'll dig through a couple different things today. I want to call out both our chat functionality and Q&A functionality, so feel free to utilize those. I saw some people using the emoji reactions too. That's awesome as well. So however you want to interact, feel free. I would love to keep this as conversational as possible. I'm going to be running through data and trends and takeaways. So as you have questions, feel free to enter them in. We can tackle them kind of live during the call, and then also at the very end as well. So feel free to let us know if anything pops up. So what we'll go through today, we're going to check in on the latest for the Kansas City market, what we're seeing specifically for the match dates, and how things are really progressing as of right now in early April. We'll also compare that to other markets. We have a really diverse range of North American markets hosting different various levels of matches. So there's some interesting data to look at and comparisons there, especially with different types of markets that we look at. And then we'll go into your playbook. So what to do now, what to keep an eye out for. You're all already doing a great job by being on this webinar. So that's kind of step one to see how things are going and also what you can plan for down the road. Like I said, we'll wrap up with some Q&A, but feel free to pepper those in throughout, and I'm happy to address them live. Cool. So the latest on the KC market. Typically, when we're looking at something like the World Cup, we get pretty granular with a lot of this data. So before I jump into things, I just want to explain a little bit about how Beyond talks about and manages different events like this. We certainly know about the World Cup coming to the market. We know what dates are happening. We know some of the dynamics and things about tickets and feeder markets and fans. But at its core, Beyond and the data that we look at in our algorithm, we treat events as just abnormal short-term changes in demand at its core. Sometimes we don't know what event might be happening. There might be a bunch of weddings happening one weekend in your specific neighborhood or market. We're not going to know about those, but we can look at the data to say something's going on and your prices should be influenced by that. So that's kind of where things start for us. We'll always look at that impact from occupancy, supply, ADR, prices, whatever it might be in the market that we can actually read, and then we'll adjust our pricing to that. So when we take a look at some of these metrics, I'll explain them once we kind of get there, but that's really how we'll be looking at this from an event perspective, really segmented by the match dates at Arrowhead Stadium. So some of those match days at a glance, we've got 6 core dates here throughout mid-June to mid-July. It's a great range of dates here, really, that will bring demand to the market. One thing I'll call out now is like really in any markets, we're not seeing a ton of people stay for like multiple matches. We'll look at this in a little bit, but we're not seeing people visit Kansas City for a month if they're not local. So I wouldn't expect that. I would treat these as almost like separate events. And we'll dig into that and I'll show you the data and kind of the why behind that. But think of the World Cup as like 6 major events, 6 big football games coming to the actual region that will help drive demand and different levels of demand for your property or properties. So we have 4 group stages here, the knockout round and then the quarterfinal. A couple of these we already know what teams are going to be matched up here, which is great. That's where we're going to see the majority of demand right now. The important thing for you to keep an eye on is as we finalize and understand who's going to be in that knockout round and who's going to be in the quarterfinal, you are going to see a ton of last minute demand flood into the market based on fans looking to visit. So that's something that we want to call out and look for. There's a lot still changing. Like I said, we already know quite a bit. We knew when tickets initially went on sale and what demand that was driving late last year. We knew when matches and teams were finally announced and how that was changing dynamics for different markets, and we'll eventually know how the finals are shaping up and how that's going to influence demand for your market. So still some things to sort of find out here, but a lot of this we already know, which is great. All right, so how are listings in Kansas City, properties in Kansas City booking up? What do things look like right now? There's a lot on this page, but I'll break down kind of what we're looking at here. So at its core, we're looking at occupancy data. So we're looking at how many listings in the market are already booked for these specific match days. Like I said before, we're looking here at this data, at the actual day that the match is happening. This is purely to give you an idea across these 6 days, really what's happening in the market and what we're seeing sort of shape up for those specific days. The peak days for a lot of these matches are the actual day that the game is being played. There's certainly shoulder demand happening. So people are going to arrive the night before. They might stay a day later, depending on when the match actually falls. It just kind of depends. And Beyond will sort of like price and recommend and show data around those dates. But for our purposes today, we're looking at like those really, really hot dates that we're actually seeing people travel and our spikes in demand. So again, this is looking at booked listings for this year in the entire Kansas City market compared to the same time last year. So that's what pacing occupancy is. If we were looking at this same data exactly 1 year ago on April 9th, 2025, you would see that purple line only. So it's our best like apples to apples comparison to see how things are shifting. So last year in that purple line, this year in that blue line. Certainly we can immediately see the impact of the World Cup here. Last year, the World Cup wasn't happening in this market. I'm sure some things were going on, but clearly not this amount of event compression. And we're seeing that now, which is great. The first thing I'm seeing right off the bat goes back to those matches where we know what teams are playing. Huge occupancy boosts and really great base around 35, even 40% for some of those matches, with a wild drop off into that early July period with the knockout round of the quarterfinal because we just don't know who's going to play. So while it might look like there's low demand there, that's what I mentioned. We're slightly ahead of last year, which kind of makes sense with like general trends this year for vacation rental markets. you're going to see that last minute pickup spike once we see the teams announced, once people finalize ticket purchases and things like that, and actually want to visit the market. So that's
Ryan,
what you want to look out for. Go ahead.
We've got one question. Are you able to make the slideshow larger?
I don't know. Within SQL, like I'm full screen, but I don't. Oh, let me try this. Is that any better? I think that actually just changed the whole
Lee,
view.
is that better? Perfect. She says perfect. And we'll be sending this the recording out to everybody. And then I had a question, Ryan. So are you saying that, oh yeah, everybody loves it. Good job. Are you saying that normally around June 16th, we're 5% booked up? I mean, of all the properties of all the short-term rentals in Kansas City, 5% of them are booked up. And now we're looking at 40% of them being booked up because of the World Cup. That's the impact that the World Cup is having.
Yep, absolutely. So think of this as like if we, again, looked at this 2 months ahead of time of June 16th last year, we'd see about 5% of the market booked up. Pretty normal for Kansas City. For more urban markets, we see like really, really last minute demand. Most people make their bookings maybe a week, 2 weeks before time. But yeah, now we're seeing that's up to 40%. So we're 40% ahead of where we were last year at this point in time.
Wow.
So yeah, huge demand. Like this is proof that like people are booking, people are coming, which is exciting. I'm sure some of you have felt that, but yeah, this is representative of the market and really the boost, the economic boost that those first couple matches are driving. So yeah, this one's really exciting. 40% that June 16th first date. I think here too, you can look at some of the different levels here of kind of how demand is falling into place. So like June 20th, for example, is 10% below at 30%. That could be representative of what teams are actually playing. It could be representative of ticket prices right now, even on the resale market, a couple different things. But this is what I want to call out and say, like, you shouldn't be pricing or even treating each of these days exactly the same. Always check in on this data and understand what's driving people to the market, what day is going to be the most profitable for you, what do you still have to sell and actually optimize per day or per kind of range. We've included the 25th to the 27th window here too, to give you an idea. We've got like that match on the 25th and then the 27th. So that's kind of the range where I would expect some people to plan for that 3 or even 4 night stay and possibly attend both matches. And you can see some of that sustained demand lifting up June 26th, where there isn't a match even happening, but we know people are probably staying through for that specific 2-match sort of boost there. So that's an important one to watch too. You're going to want to look at those sort of like shoulder dates specifically for that run, since we know it's lucrative for people to try to attend 2 matches and stay at one place the whole time. And then, yeah, I called out for the July dates. We don't know the teams. There's still bookings coming in, but you'll probably see a waterfall of demand. So just be prepared for that as of right now, and don't panic until we see those teams actually announced, which is not going to happen for a while until we get to the summer. Cool. So what are hosts earning per night? So this is going to be, again, similar looking chart. We're looking at those same date ranges. We've got this year in that dark blue, last year in that purple. And this is looking at ADR, which is average daily rate across those match dates this year versus last year. So this is looking at truly what guests have paid hosts on average for those stays and for that occupancy. So you can see a similar great boost here. This is going to be, yes, we're seeing more people just book on that occupancy chart. Here you're seeing people are paying quite a bit more than they were at the same time last year. So this is great to see. Overall, we're seeing nice gains. Overall, across the dates here, we're up 65% in average daily rate. That's reflective of hosts and property managers increasing their prices, understanding the demand that was coming in, and then capturing that. So we're looking to hold this level of growth and even maintain it and grow it as we get closer. You can see the peak date here that people have paid the most for is June 27th. So that's the highest ADR of any match day. And again, sort of the tail end of that 25th and 27th trifecta of dates with 2 matches in there. And then you can see that dip in July. So at this same point for last year in July, we had higher ADRs than we did last year. Again, people just haven't really been booking yet. I would encourage you to make sure your prices are up for those final 2 matches at Arrowhead, and you'll see those ADRs rise in the market once we get closer.
Ryan?
Sarah, yeah, I see this question. I love that question on minimum stays. I might have this toward the tail end of the presentation. I love the idea of switching up your minimum night stay recommendation. I think for right now, it still to me seems like for a market like Kansas City, we're 2 months away from that first match, 11 weeks or so. You still have time to kind of play with strategy here, in my opinion. I wouldn't shy away from trying to get 2 nights for every match date. If someone's going to come in just for 1 night for that game day, maybe try to make them stay the other night. See where the game is falling. I don't have the day of weeks in here, but if you can get someone to stay through the weekend or get them to check in the night before, that's a great strategy. You're probably going to want to pull that restriction off if you're not seeing it booked up as we get into like May, even past Memorial Day. But I think it's a great gamble to try to push some more occupancy around some of these dates. For the 25th, 26th, and 27th, I would certainly require a 3-night minimum stay for that whole range. You've got 2 matches there. There's going to be a lot of excitement going on. Even if people don't have tickets to both matches, I would try to force it. But again, know when to pull that back, even to like a 2-night minimum, once you get closer to the actual event. So we'll talk about that later, but I would definitely recommend playing with some of that. Also, as it relates to your price, because you're asking somebody to still pay a higher price here.
And Ryan, can you clarify the $488 a night? Do you know if that is a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom? Is that per bedroom? Is that average per property, or what is that?
Yeah, great question. This is average per property for all of Kansas City. So we could go even deeper and look at like bedroom size and location. This is to give you sort of a health check. We'll share some resources afterwards too, where you can drill down into some of that data so you can match comps for your property. But yeah, not every property should be priced at $488. Some should be higher, some should be lower. This is our average, which is still great for the market. But good clarification. Cool. Let's keep moving through. So this chart is going to be pretty representative of the past 2. This is looking at a metric that we look at a lot here at Beyond called RevPAN, which stands for revenue per available night. So really what that's looking at is, as a host or property manager, how many nights do you have to sell per month, per date range, that you can actually sell? And then how much revenue are you making across that period for the average night? So it's more of an efficiency metric. Really the core things that this will pull out is like, if you have to block one of your nights for like emergency maintenance or something going on, or maybe you want to stay at one of the properties for one of these matches, we don't want to pull that into some of our calculations for revenue. So that's really what this looks at. It's like truly a great picture. If I was going to look at one metric for the market to understand how things are going, I would want to look at this, because it's blending the rate that a guest is paying and that occupancy level for the market. So you'll see it really reflects what we were just looking at. We're seeing great strength here for 2026 compared to last year. And you can see again for those July dates, things are still a little bit lower. So yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing as far as markets here, and sort of our deep dive for Kansas City. Like I said, there's a lot more data out there. Within our Kansas City market, we have different hyper-local clusters and neighborhoods. So like I said, we can follow up with how to get some of that information and beyond. Spoiler alert, you just have to make an account. We don't charge for that type of data. You can take a look at it for Kansas City. If you're currently using Beyond, we've got a couple more tools too. So we'll share that, because I know you're probably looking for some more of that segmentation on properties that look similar to yours, or how far you are from the stadium, things like that, to give you some more context. All right, so moving into some sort of like different metrics that, again, we try to take a look at to measure like market health, especially around some of these events where we haven't seen them in the market before. Some interesting data here. I'll start on the left with bookings by channel. We love to look at, on the classic online travel agencies, OTAs like Airbnb, Booking, Vrbo, who's getting the most share here. So during the period mid-June, mid-July, what we're seeing for bookings by channel, Airbnb is certainly the top. Not unusual for a market like Kansas City in the US. Big Airbnb market. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that and host on Airbnb. If you're not hosting on Airbnb, you can see here representative of kind of that share that you might be missing out on. So important to call out, but I understand people have different distribution strategies and ways to run your business. And also Booking.com is also still very large. So we typically see Booking.com growing and expanding share in a lot of more urban markets in the US. Booking.com is the primary channel for Europe. So we've seen them kind of grow quite a bit here in the US over the past couple of years. Vrbo taking a slice of the pie as well, based out of Austin on the Expedia side. I'm expecting across all these three channels some more push to get people to host last minute for the World Cup. I know they're going to be pushing for the Olympics in LA and also in Oklahoma City. I know that they push for the Super Bowl every year, so you might see more supply come online with some of these more advantageous hosts and people who think, hey, I have that ADU, or I have this other property that I maybe rent long term, it's available, I'm going to pop it up for a short-term rental in June and July and try to get some great bookings in there. You might see more of that, but again, this market is pretty much dominated by Airbnb, although there's some representation on other channels as well. I want to call out stay duration. I saw River just asked in chat, what do you recommend for minimum nights? So across this period, June, July, what we're seeing is the average length of stay that guests have booked so far is right at 2 days. So what I said earlier, like I wouldn't shy away from trying to get a 2-night minimum tied to some of the match dates specifically. Get someone to check in the night before and stay that night, get them to stay through a weekend, whatever it might be. I wouldn't be scared of that compared to especially a 1-night stay requirement. So I would try to bump it up for 2. Certainly for June 25th, 26th, 27th, my personal recommendation would be to go ahead and push for that 3-night stay. We've got the 2 matches on the 25th and 26th, so try to get, or the 25th and 27th, try to get someone to stay through. Most people probably will, but try to capture them for that 3-night stay. I might talk about this earlier, I forget my takeaways, but one thing here too that you can always kind of manage is even if you don't manage to get that 2-day stay and you got to get somebody in for 1 night, let's say they're checking in on a Friday and the match is on Friday, and you don't have anybody staying the Thursday night before, you could always message that guest and say, hey, if you want to check in early, I'll charge you $50, $100. Let's say you're charging Thursday night for $200. You could get that sort of like early check-in fee as a portion of that rate, even if the night's going to go unsold. So that's one way to kind of remix and think about inventory, especially if you don't have somebody in the night before. And most guests typically want to check in early, so you can kind of offer that, try to get some more money out of it, and work that way. It also works on the back end too. If you want someone to have a late checkout, no one's going to check in that day to stay the following night. So you can say, hey, $50, stay a little bit late, no matter to me, I'll have my cleaner come the next day, more money in your pocket. So some interesting ways to play with length of stay and communication with the guests. We've also got top amenities here for the market. I don't think any of these are super surprising, especially for a market like Kansas City. Maybe the most interesting one is listings that allow pets is only at 44%. So anybody traveling with their pet, they're going to be looking only at 44% of the market. Certainly some listings with pools and hot tubs that could be advantageous over the summer. I don't think anyone's going to put in a pool before June at this point, but always interesting to take a look at what's driving some of the demand on the amenity front. All right, so now that we've looked at the Kansas City market, let me give you a snapshot of some of that data for other markets as well, so you can kind of see where other markets are succeeding ahead or behind of Kansas City. So what we're looking at here is some of those top cities, not all. This is actually only looking at US and Canada right now, and looking at that occupancy pace number compared to last year. So in general here, I think everybody's kind of in the same boat. Some of these markets have fewer matches than in Kansas City. So I think that could explain some markets with a bit higher ADR growth year over year. But even then, Boston, Kansas City, Toronto with 16, 18% occupancy ahead of 2025 is still great. We are seeing some other cities. You can see we have South Bay, California, and San Francisco here as 2 markets for the game being played down in San Jose. I think these occupancy numbers are really reflective of supply in the market. Also markets like Seattle, New York, there aren't a lot of short-term rentals that are licensed in these markets. So they're picking up a bit faster due to that lower supply. So that's kind of my read here. But again, similar urban markets in the US, we're seeing some pretty similar trends on just occupancy pickup and how many people are actually making those bookings. Here's where it gets pretty interesting to me. Here's the average daily rate paid for some of those markets. So Kansas City kind of right in the middle, 354 on the average rate across the June to July period is certainly great. So that's really cool to see. What you can see here again too kind of comes to supply. Boston, fairly regulated market, not a ton of inventory and supply happening in that market. A pretty small market compared to some of these, and especially Kansas City, they're getting that higher rate. Same with South Bay, California, it's going to be San Jose. Not a ton of availability, but some places really, really close to the stadium compared to our lowest ADR here, San Francisco. Those people are going to travel at least an hour to get to the game, so they're definitely paying less in some of that rate. Canadian markets also quite a bit cheaper. I also know off the top of my head, the markets in Mexico, Monterrey, Mexico City, they're also a bit more inexpensive than what we're seeing in some of these top US urban markets. Cool, and then profits. So looking at sort of that revenue per available night number, no real surprises here based on what we were just looking at. Again, Kansas City looking great across the board, pretty strong here. Some other cities taking it away, but again, a lot of this has been supply and then how many matches are being played in a couple of these markets and how that's driving overall performance. Cool. Okay, so we've gotten into some of this already over chat, but some more recommendations on what to do now. Just with where things are in Kansas City and how we've already seen the market pick up and where we're also seeing markets pick up around the world. Interesting things that we'll take a look at. So we've talked a little bit about pricing and when you have sort of the power to price some of these markets. So I've alluded to some of this schedule, but this kind of lays it out for you. Right now in April, you already saw the Kansas City market is hovering around 40% for those key dates in June. People are booking, that's way ahead of pace. We're going to be seeing upwards of 70, 80% occupancy for the market. So there's definitely still people that are still waiting to book, waiting to search and find different places to stay. But your strategy needs to be reflective and priced at that right now, or else you're going to miss out. Someone's going to book a low rate, or you might be priced too high and someone might not want to book. Your pricing should be dialed in specifically for those June dates as of right now. I mentioned this earlier, but with all these different markets, we see what we call a booking lead time start to approach. So for typical markets like Kansas City, I would call more urban, we see people book closer to arrival. Business travelers, even people just looking to maybe get away for a weekend, on average, we see these people book maybe a couple weeks in advance. The flip side of this is think of a market like Hawaii. No one's booking a last minute trip to Hawaii. They've planned their travel, they've planned air travel, they've booked a resort or a home. This is all happening months in advance. So for a market like Oahu, we're seeing 6 to 7 months of booking lead time where people are making those bookings. So it can really change per market, but for Kansas City in this event, you're going to see a lot of compression just naturally start to happen in surge about 2 to 4 weeks out. So that's going to happen probably starting in mid-May, certainly right around Memorial Day, and then as we get into June as well. So make sure you're watching that. Make sure that you're obviously keeping an eye on your own properties, but look at what the market is doing. Have access to that data. Look at it every couple of days, at least once a week, I think is the best. If you're refreshing every hour, you're not going to see crazy changes, but you'll see that start to pick up.
Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
There's a couple of questions, and one thing I want to point out, I just want to ask if I'm thinking about this correctly. So right now, you've got 40% occupancy. So that means 60% of the properties are not booked. So the majority don't have bookings yet, right? Is that
the
way to look at it?
We still see a lot of the market that's available. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you're just saying that really people are just typical. They're going to be last minute bookers. It looks like 2 to 4 weeks out. Okay, so not to worry yet.
Yeah, I think don't worry yet. We still have a lot of demand. And remember, I think, yes, we can see the market at 40%, but remember same time last year was at 5%. Um, I can try to pull some final numbers, but I would say that Kansas City last year for that June, July period, I mean, summer typically tends to be sort of the high season that we see for the market anyway. A lot of people coming to visit, making trips here and there, whatever it might be. That's going to increase on a normal year, even 60, closer to 70%. So when you look at us already at 40%, like I would love for the market to push towards a sellout. But that's going to depend on supply changes and pricing. So yeah, don't worry if you're not booked. If you're not booked right now, I'd say you're in a really great spot. If you're already booked, I hope you got a great rate. But if you're not booked right now, we're still 2 months ahead of time. Like I mentioned before, like we're past the Super Bowl now. More and more people are talking about the World Cup and FIFA in general. So you'll see just naturally more people start to think about it and be like, oh, I should go, or I want to go to this match, or whatever it might be. I want to check it out. You'll see more people just start to think about it, especially like a month from now.
Okay. Do you want to answer? Rachel has a good question.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. This is something that we can look at. So Rachel's question about, are we seeing just one or two people book for each of these properties? Are they trying to throw a party and cram a bunch of people in? There's a couple things that we can look at beyond. We can certainly understand if someone for their booking is plugging in all of the guests that are coming with them. That would be a perfect case scenario, but as we know, that doesn't always happen. I admittedly don't even always do that when I book a property. Sometimes I just have time to make sure my name is on it and I'm bringing two people with me. But as a host, I think this is something naturally that you want to make sure you're prepared to handle and deal with. There's a couple different ways to deal with it, but I think sort of understanding the guests before they come in, asking some of those questions. Is there anyone else traveling with you? How many people? Clearly communicating how many beds you have and the occupancy limit on your property is always great. And then there's some really interesting ways that you can actually work with like digital ebooks before people check in. We have some time, so I'll share a quick anecdote. I was helping a property manager in Chicago, and what they would do is they had sort of a digital ebook welcome guide that they would send to guests. I forget what tool they used, but they would send it to the guest who was checking in ahead of time, and then there was something in there, some like digital tracking link that would actually like count how many times that was being opened and roughly where geographically that PDF was being opened. So they had somebody book last minute for downtown Chicago, and then all of a sudden within an hour, that PDF welcome guide had been opened by like 50 people in the Chicagoland area. Immediately they knew they were going to throw a party or do something like that. They shut down the booking, canceled it ahead of time before even getting there. So you can kind of get there if you're really worried about people trying to cram a bunch of people in. Right now, a lot of the data that we'll likely see is anywhere between 1 and 4 people. But yeah, I think if you've got the limits clearly on your listing for how many people or beds or rooms, start there and then just always be ready to kind of suss out the guests and maybe understand a bit more of why they're actually traveling and how many people.
Ryan, a couple of the questions I'll combine. We've got someone that's asked a question about that's in Lawrence, and that's about 30 minutes outside of Kansas City, and one who's asked a question about another city that's about a St. Joe, about an hour north of Arrowhead. And they're just curious about. I don't know that they're seeing a lot of uptick that far out yet. What are your thoughts about that? Lawrence does have one of it is a base camp. So they did get a base camp this year. So what are your thoughts on those kind of outlying areas?
Yeah, I would say look at the data. I'm happy to share that afterwards too. I can grab people's info and kind of share. I think mentioning the hotels is a great sort of canary in the coal mine almost. Like hotel revenue managers are really savvy about this type of stuff. They go pretty hard on like short-term events happening. So if you're not seeing rates there really kick up, they have a ton of inventory. I would just expect lower compression. And this is typically what we see, especially for a match like this. We've seen it here in San Francisco, Miami, a couple other markets too. As you get an hour plus outside of the market, you're probably like you might just get more bookings than usual, but not at a higher rate. That kind of compression and flow will sort of ebb for you. Beyond will show you that. Any good pricing tool will show you that and kind of recommend, hey, we're not seeing a ton here, but maybe a little bit of elevation. based again on just sort of the market data that we're seeing elsewhere. So I would look at that, but you're already on the right track, like looking at hotels. That I think is a good indicator. Hotels normally, if you look at downtown Kansas City, they're probably pretty high. They have a good idea of that compression and what will actually happen. Becky, does per night include fees and taxes? What we're looking at here is rental rates. I typically recommend talking about rental rates in these types of conversations just because different hosts have different fees and structures that they want to actually bring to the guest. So depends, but a lot of what we've looked at today is strictly performance on the rental rate that the guest is paying, not that all-in rate. We look at it at Beyond to understand what people are paying and their perception of the cost of a night at property. But for the data we're looking at today, that was all rental. Yeah, a couple questions here. I mean, Marie, closer distance to the stadium, higher pricing. Think like a guest. When I'm trying to price, sometimes I step back and say, okay, if I'm a guest, how am I going to do this? I want to stay close to the stadium. Maybe if there's like something else I could do and I'm staying more central to like a stadium downtown and another attraction, that might be lucrative as a guest and give you the ability to increase prices a bit more. But yeah, I think in general, the closer you are to the stadium, there's a pretty direct correlation to the higher prices you can charge and higher rates that you'll get. A note on cancellation policies. That's a great question too. I think that's something you can really experiment with here. I would be careful with them. Again, you can understand in your market what the average cancellation policies are. We can show you that and Beyond directly. You can also just kind of shop around on Airbnb and see what's out there, filter by different cancellation policies. I wouldn't shy away from increasing your cancellation policy for specific match dates. It can be something that makes a guest a little bit nervous, but I think if you're pushing 7 nights, 14 nights, that's not too crazy. Getting into 30, 60 days in advance would be like paying now for your stay or paying in a couple weeks. So that might be a bit off-putting for a guest. But I think if you want to try something even slightly more aggressive, try it now. And if you're not getting bookings, you're not getting hits on your listing, read that as a possible signal that people are kind of turning away. Again, think like a guest. They might not know until 2 weeks in advance if they're really going to be able to make it. So do you want to take that risk now? I would be okay if someone canceled 2 weeks out. I knew I could probably still sell it for the World Cup. So totally a gamble, but I think it's something you should really play with for the World Cup specifically. River, on 2-night minimums, you have 2-night minimums all the time. That's great. Yeah, you went up to 4 days for a lot of this. I would say for a single match day, 4 days seems like a lot to me. I'm probably not the average soccer football fan coming to a lot of these games, but 4 nights in Kansas City, if I'm traveling and don't have a place to stay, seems like a bit much. If you're sort of like pushing for 4 days, I would certainly recommend lower pricing than you would normally try to push to for what we've been talking about today. But I think for a lot of match dates, 2 is pretty solid. You can push to 3. You might be able to get 4 on that June 25th to 27th period. That I think would be totally normal. But yeah, I think that could be an issue. With minimum stay restrictions specifically, that again is something that can block you from even getting visible to a guest. If someone's plugging in 1 night, 2 night for a match date, they're not even seeing your property. So that could be a reason why you're not getting bookings. If you have multiple properties in different units, try it on one. Try lowering that mid stay on one of them, see what happens, and use that as like a way to kind of guide the rest of your strategy. Cool. Yeah, the team home sites, I don't have the exact information on that right now, but again, you could plug in some more of these specific locations into our tool and get some more of that data to really show you, especially compared to last year, are things different? If you're looking at data compared to the same time last year for your market and it looks right in line, that's great. Don't change anything. If you're seeing what I showed earlier, where we're 40% ahead of same time last year, that's going to be your permission to push rate and try to change things up a little bit here. So always be on the lookout for some of that data. Great questions across the board. Keep them coming. I've got a couple more slides here. I think a lot of this we've really talked about. But some of our recommendations on, what people get wrong with a lot of these events. The Super Bowl every year is always a big one that people go crazy for, that ultimately never really performs that well. But yeah, I mean, definitely don't set one rate. Make sure you're at least using some sort of seasonal policy or different prices for those match dates. Don't wait until the last minute to really adjust prices. That should already be done and being done now. Those shoulder nights, this middle one here, don't treat those the same, but they are going to have different levels of demand. I would imagine a lot of people aren't going to want to be checking in the same day as a match. So that day before a match is probably going to be really good opportunity for you to increase some rate and try to get people to stay, again, with those minimum stays. Yeah, don't assume that we will continue to see demand slowly build. We will probably see that over the next couple weeks, but then once we actually know who's in knockout and quarterfinal, those dates are going to go crazy. So I would say price them like you have these dates right now. Be ready to increase if possible, but Kansas City having a quarterfinal is huge and great. So that will definitely drive a lot of interest in the market. Same for that last one. Definitely don't ignore those July dates quite yet. So yeah, just general tips and tricks. I think a lot of you, if you've been here for the full 40 minutes now, I've talked to a lot of this, but you're already on the right track being here. All right, so some checklists. If you think like this and kind of want to work through, I would definitely be using some form of dynamic pricing. Certainly Beyond is a great option. There are a lot of options in the industry for you to use some form of pricing that informs your strategy with what's happening in the market. We're seeing demand shifts every day, every week for the World Cup. So you want to make sure your pricing is evolving with that until you get that perfect booking. I encourage everybody to set a minimum price for some of these events. If you have a $100 minimum throughout the whole year, it doesn't hurt to bump that up to $200, $250 for some of these events, just to make sure you're not going to go too low. Just another safety lever for you to use. Always price each day individually. I wouldn't think the same for all these match dates. We saw different demand. The 25th, 27th is going to be crazy. July is going to be crazy. So treating them the same is just going to hurt you in the end. Look at those shoulder nights. I think it's a great opportunity to really maximize this level of demand. The night before, I think, is going to be the most important. Maybe priced a little bit lower than that high demand date, but can still try to get people in on that first day. And then just keep an eye on July. We'll be sharing a lot more information for all FIFA markets as we get closer to that July period. And for anybody using Beyond, I forget if I talked about this, but our revenue management team actually went in. Once we had the dates actually announced, they put in sort of a safety event recommendation in our pricing for the market. Then once we actually saw how many matches were happening, what teams were playing, they actually sat down at the time, listened to the press conference all at once, and updated all of our markets across North America. They'll be doing the same once we get the knockout round and quarterfinals set. So when that happens in June, your pricing will basically be taken care of. So we'll increase those prices a bit more fine-tuned. They're already increased now. We're not pricing July low. We know there will be demand, but if it's going to be huge teams traveling to Kansas City, we know we're going to want to increase that even further. So be on the lookout for it, but we'll be handling it quite a bit. Here's a little bit more on dynamic pricing in case anybody is newer to that world. Again, even if you're a host with one property, I encourage you to look into this. You've probably heard about Airbnb smart pricing. That is, I would say, kind of more of a basic version of dynamic pricing. But essentially what you want here is there are different levels of demand for your specific market and for your properties and your competitors' properties every single day. There's certainly high season. We can talk about summer between Memorial Day and Labor Day, but there are daily specifics there on a 365 calendar that you should be reading from the market and incorporating into your pricing strategy. Dynamic pricing is not just high prices for high events. It's also the right competitive price for low season, those shoulder nights, whatever it might be. Dynamic pricing is the way to get you to optimized inventory, selling as many nights as you want to sell at the right price at the right time. So that's really the goal here. Beyond has a ton of tools available for you to customize and take control. So you're never really, with any dynamic pricing strategy, never turn it on and walk away. It's not somebody who's going to sit there and do your prices for you. It's just a way for you to have a more advanced strategy that's actually easier to implement and sort of audit as these changes happen in the market on a regular basis. So check it out, explore. If you're using it already, great. Look at what other tools you could do, like mid-stay restrictions, cancellations, that all come under that revenue management umbrella for your properties. So here's how Beyond helps. We certainly offer dynamic pricing. We've got that built-in strategy to really show you. If anybody's using Beyond right now in the market, you can go to your chart view on the listing view actually, and we just launched this week. We actually mark each event on the chart view. So you can go in and see all the matches in there, see how you're pricing, see how the market's performing right now. That's probably your best view right now. We launched that on Monday this week. So feel free to jump in and take a look at that. And then we also share a lot of the data I shared earlier, but again, you can drill down a bit further. The Kansas City market we were looking at today is huge. I was looking at every property, studios to 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms. So you can drill down into really what fits more for your portfolio, understand what's going on, and then help map your strategy to that. But in general, a lot of the trends that I covered earlier, will really mimic likely what you're seeing in your market in and around the stadium. Cool. I made it in 45 minutes. That was really fun to talk about, and thank you all for the great questions so far. We've got a couple more in there, which is good. On cancellation policies, I hear you. Like cancellation policies, I will always say, like, you got to do what you got to do on the operation side and what's happened in the past. My recommendation is to always be aware of what's happening in the market, see what guests are saying, and be ready to play with it, if you're willing. So that I think is a great tool for people. Cindy asked thoughts on discounts for a month stay or others. You're with Beyond Pricing, no bookings for June, July so far, no discounts set up. I think discounts for month stays are always a good thing to have in place. I can't imagine there are many hosts that would say no to a month-long stay. I know there's considerations on, again, people staying for a long amount of time or sort of tying up your property, but getting 100% occupancy for a month is usually pretty tempting. So I would certainly say have them available. You can always shop around. Again, just go plug in your market on Airbnb or Google and see what prices are out there for similar listings for a 28 plus, a 30 plus night stay. That might help you just get more visibility. But yeah, I think if you don't have anything for June and July right now, do not panic. I guess that's also my big takeaway from today. We're still over 2 months away. As we saw before, there's 60% of that large market still left to sell, and we're seeing great rates. Make sure you're not overpriced. Gut check what you're selling out there for now with those mid-stay restrictions. See how a guest is coming across your listing and try to optimize from there. But yeah, there's plenty of time. Kansas City always is going to pick up relatively last minute compared to other markets. So yeah, don't panic right now, but be on top of your strategy. Robin asked, what is the cost to sign up with Beyond? If you sign up and make an account today, it's free. You don't pay right off the bat. When you sign up and make an account, if you can easily connect to your Airbnb account for a booking, or if you're using a property management system, we support those as well. You can connect and actually get access to the market data I was talking about for free. That's going to be in our market insights tool. And if you sign up for Beyond today, you'll sort of see it as you go through onboarding to jump and just look at data. So you can take a look at that today. If you want to go ahead and onboard and enable with dynamic pricing, we have onboarding to walk you through sort of those initial settings, get you familiar with the tool. Again, we don't want you to like turn Beyond Pricing on and walk away. So want to make sure you're actually involved and understand what's going on. So if you have time for that, feel free to jump in. For all new hosts, we offer the first $5,000 in bookings that we price for free. So that's going to give you a handful of bookings to say, okay, this booking came in, here's how Beyond changes my calendar and my pricing and sends that automatically back to Airbnb. And then after that point, our fee for growth, which is our entry-level package, is just 1% of every booking. So what we do is with the integration that we have with Airbnb, Booking.com, every integration, we send prices over to your system and your properties, and then we also pull back the new reservations that are coming in. So we're able to see if people cancel, how that impacts your calendar. Certainly, a good example for that is if somebody books your property on a Saturday, they're checking in on Saturday. If the Friday night is available beforehand, it's kind of less valuable to somebody that wants to stay over a weekend, right? So we need to understand that someone is checking in on that Saturday so we can take your pricing down a little bit on Friday and try to get somebody in there, even if they have to check out on Saturday. So that's why we have that two-way integration. But like I said, you can jump to beyondpricing.com. You can actually see some of this market data without even signing up. So feel free to explore, especially with big events like the World Cup. We like to give people as much data as possible. So feel free to check it out. Reach out to us if you have any questions or anything. We'll send a follow-up email with this recording and with some other takeaways too. I'll try to see if I can pull some other interesting data for some of the markets we talked about in chat. Leah mentioned, I'm almost ready to get my home on Airbnb. What is the latest date you recommend listing? If you can list it the day before a match, do it. You'll probably get somebody in there. You still have plenty of time. So as soon as possible is great, especially because for newer listings, you need some of that presence to grow on a platform like Airbnb. But you've got plenty of time. If you can get it up a couple weeks ahead of time, a month ahead of time, that's great. Even before those July matches would be awesome. So the sooner the better, but even a day before, if you can get somebody in there, there's going to be people looking for places to stay. So,
hey Ryan, yeah. We missed a couple. Hang on, I just saw them. Oh, Marie was asking, what are the better sites to post your listing? Maybe you did say it and I missed that.
No, I missed this question, Marie, but what I covered earlier with the sort of channel mix and distribution for Kansas City, Airbnb is the biggest channel by far. I'd say if you're not selling on Airbnb, you're likely missing out on some of the guests that are coming to the market. I don't work for Airbnb. That's just me seeing what's happening in the market. A lot of people go to Airbnb for Kansas City. Also, Booking.com was a big one. I think it was around 20% of bookings that we're seeing for the World Cup so far. That could be a little bit skewed. As I mentioned earlier, we see Booking.com as the biggest channel over in Europe. So I don't know that we're getting too many people jumping over from Europe for the World Cup, but that could be reflective of that. And then we also have VRBO. So I'd say Airbnb is most important. Booking.com can be great, especially just for getting international travelers in general, and then Vrbo as like a bonus, but definitely Airbnb. And that reminded me of one question from way earlier about international travel. I forget who asked it.
Yeah, that was Sarah.
Sarah. Yeah, cool. So Sarah asked, any concern about decreased intercontinental travel to the US in light of geopolitical unrest and crazy gas and travel prices right now? So great that you're thinking about this. This is definitely sort of the pipeline that we typically see when anything like this happens. So here at Beyond, we've been looking this week especially, we haven't really seen a spike in cancellations or really a slowdown in bookings for properties here in the US. I haven't done a deep dive on like international travelers. To be honest, since the beginning of the year and throughout all of last year, international travel has sort of been waning inbound to the US. I think the thing about gas and air travel prices right now for people staying right now here in the spring, like spring break, probably all the way through like Memorial Day, maybe early summer, a lot of people, like those people traveling to Hawaii, bought their plane tickets months ago. So they're already set and gonna go. So I think the rising air travel costs that we're seeing now, because the airlines are sort of prepping for some of those higher prices down the line, is gonna start to impact travel probably in the next couple weeks. But like I said, I haven't seen anything right now. My take this week is that even if we do see some of that air travel start to go down, international travel slow down even further, this is kind of what we saw with COVID, right? At a much more severe level. But for a lot of like drive to markets here in the US, we saw business pick up. If a lot of people were going to go to Oktoberfest this October or travel over to Europe in the second part of the year, they're probably starting to rethink some of that travel, and they might pivot to a more local destination that they maybe are flying to or driving to, which is advantageous as a host here in the US. So great question, important consideration. I don't have a great answer for you right now on what's happening, but I'll say like we haven't seen a massive slowdown or a full gap stop. Like anything like that happening has not happened so far. So fingers crossed, we'll see how things shake out and be on the lookout. We typically try to post things if we're seeing a spike in cancellations or if we're seeing any changes to overall demand. But as of right now, still looking okay. So we'll hope that continues. Becky, any suggestions on how to get guests to actually leave a review? This is tough, I will say. It's always great to like make it as easy as possible for them. QR codes, little messages. I'm not above kind of bribing and leaving something for them and saying like, we'd really, really appreciate it if you left us a review, even if you have them like send in a photo of the review, or I don't know, anything like that is always very helpful, certainly for a new listing too. So there are some different things you can offer, like, hey, if you booked with me and you leave a review, message me or stay in touch with me, or I'll send you this email and I'll give you 10% off your next stay or something like that. Even if they might not return ever, I would probably do that. Just be like, yeah, okay, I can help somebody out and get a little coupon. I kind of need something for that. That could be a great way to kind of push. So that's one way. I'm sure other hosts have better ideas. Like it's been a couple years since I've actually hosted a property, so I'm sure there's some new ways. But check out some of those groups. Check Facebook. Check Reddit. I'm sure some people have some good opportunities.
Ryan, I'll use this opportunity since we're about 4 minutes out. We probably should wrap this up. But so many of you, probably all of you, know that we, the Kansas City Short-Term Rental Alliance, does host a monthly meetup. It's the third Thursday. Our next one will be April 16th at 6 p.m. and that will be a vendor panel. So you'll see cleaners, pest control companies, all kinds of companies that can help support your businesses, especially if you're new there. And we also have question and answer time for just these kinds of questions. How do you get guests to actually leave a review? That's a great question that we could do in person. And I just want to also say thank you, Ryan. We've got a couple of comments about when are you having another webinar? And thank you. This was really informative. This was, really, really great, Ryan. Really, really good information. And we will send out a recording just reminding everybody about that. And as far as another webinar, let us know. You can reach out to all of us on our private Facebook group, the Kansas City Short-Term Rental Alliance, or you can send questions and comments through the MOVHA website or our new website on different webinars that you want to hear about. We could do something like this again. There's all kinds of topics that we could be doing, but we want to know, hear from you what it is you want to hear about. And I'm glad that this one was something that was useful. And thank you to Ryan. Everyone, please support our sponsors. That this is a paid sponsorship, and this helps us pass legislation that will protect your businesses. This legislation that we're working on will keep your business in business, and Ryan and his team are helping us with that. So please support him and all of our vendors that support us. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Ryan?
That's all I got. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody. This was great. We always have data, so don't tempt me. Maybe in 2 months, right before those first matches, we do another World Cup check-in and kind of see how things are going. At the very least, I can send over some data for you all to take a look at. But this has been great. Thank you all for the great questions, and thank you, Susan.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.